So you're eating a plant-based diet, you're doing it consistently, there's no obvious vegan junk food sneaking into your diet, certainly on a regular basis anyway. Actually, it's the best you've eaten quite objectively in years, and largely you feel really great at the same time. And so, to your mind, it's almost going pretty perfectly aside from one elephant in the room. The scale still isn't budging, or perhaps you started losing weight transitioning to this way of eating, but you've hit that dreaded plateau and you're left scratching your head thinking, hold on a second, I'm doing everything right here. I actually feel pretty fantastic in by every other anecdotal health metric. What's going wrong? I'm following the Whole Foods plant-based guidelines as they're laid out in YouTube videos like this. Perhaps you even take it upon yourself to read some of the plant-based books, some of the literature, but you're still not seeing results on the scale. In this video, I want to share with you the 5 most common reasons why I see vegans and plant-based dieters who are actually eating a clean diet, right? They're eating very consistently. I'm not talking about any of the obvious stop eating vegan junk food shtick today. You're not going to hear any of that in this video. It's already assumed you're eating really well, you're doing so consistently, but the scale isn't budging. Let me share 5 common mistakes I see with this as to why vegans and plant-based dieters are struggling to get results. Mistake number 1, you're eating, as I say, 100% whole foods, or at least very close to it, but you're actually overdoing some of the more calorie-rich whole foods, such as nuts, and therefore by extension, of course, nut butters, seeds and any of their derivatives like seed butters and pastes, tahini, a good example of this. Maybe avocado, don't have quite the same calories per pound as the aforementioned, but still a fat and therefore quite calorie-rich whole food in avocado. And certainly dried fruit is a really obvious example of this. Those 2 little looking medjool dates that you have as your dessert after dinner, well, it's clean, right? It's better than ice cream like I used to have back in the day. Yeah, okay, healthier maybe, but there's 120 calories like that down the hatch. That might not sound like a lot, 120 calories, that's probably less than a highly processed protein bar, isn't it, nowadays? But at the same time, there's all these calories sneaking into your diet, perhaps from these more calorie-rich items. It's easy to see where things might be going wrong for you as the day goes on. And so what I would say to you is that eating healthily, may be very obvious to some of you, but eating healthily does not mean the same as eating calorically appropriately for you. That's a bit of a mouthful. But I think whilst there is lots of overlap between healthy eating and weight loss friendly eating, I will concede, at the same time, nothing is guaranteed when those little calories are in play, because yes, lots of whole plant foods tend to have a low caloric density anyway, and that's one of the fantastic advantages of this way of eating from a weight loss perspective. But as I say, the aforementioned items, the nuts, nut butters, seeds, tahini, etc., avocado, dried fruit, like our dried mango, medjool dates, the couple of tablespoons of raisins you throw on your oatmeal in the morning, this is all stacking up the calories, and it's not, don't get me wrong, like when we talk about fixes and solutions to this, like these foods need to go necessarily, but it's more about fairly accounting for them as large contributors to your daily calorie intake. Mistake number 2, sadly one that many of us learn the hard way, and then we suddenly go, oh yeah, of course, and it's not accounting properly for the amount of calories in some of our beverages. There are some exceptions to this, low and no calorie beverages, and this is your fix, of course, focusing on those, the water, the teas without milk, herbal teas, I quite like in the winter months, black coffee, etc., to keep the calories in check. But things like our smoothies and our cold pressed juices, sodas, of course, and, you know, let's call them the more luxury coffees, the more milky, frankly, coffees, such as cappuccinos, lattes especially. Even a flat white might be, with oat milk, might still be 80, 90. A small flat white might be 100 calories potentially. And so, yeah, I think, you know, these are still, spit it out, these are still a contributor of calories to your daily diet, but I think they're easy to underestimate. I also think, we're going to talk about this with another mistake later on, because there isn't almost that sit-down factor with some of your beverages in that you just kind of mindlessly sip on them, and you add them between meals and as an accompaniment to meals in many cases sometimes. You don't necessarily rationalize, think about them consciously as this is a contributor of calories, this is part of the meal itself, this is part of my consumption. And so when you do that end of day reflection on, well, what did I consume today, and was this a good day from a weight loss perspective? It's easy to miss the 3 cups of oat milk that you're pouring into your coffee over the day. So again, the solution, I want to be clear, like with the calorie-rich stuff in mistake number 1, is not to avoid this stuff altogether. Once you understand this principle of calorie deficit, and that being the main driver of weight loss on the scale, consistently being in a calorie deficit, you realize, well, I can still have beverages in my diet if I want, but again, I have to honestly and fairly account for them. I have to consider, are these a contributor, to calories in my daily diet? And so I better just be mindful of that, and I better consider, before I'm consuming every beverage, how many calories roughly might this contain? You don't need to get obsessive, but how many calories might this contain? Do I really need this right now? How many calories are in the meal that I'm having the beverage with? And do I need all of this big hit of calories in one go necessarily? Mistake number 3, in a similar vein to our beverages, this is something that misses almost the sit down element, and therefore do you necessarily mentally register, hey, I've just consumed food and therefore calories here. Again, not that you need to be obsessed with the calories, but it is something you might consider keeping quite low if your goal is to finish each day, of course, in a calorie deficit and therefore lose weight if you're serious. But here it is, it's guessing at snacks and grazing quite mindlessly. Again, it's just not taking them that seriously and accounting for it. Like, hey, I've eaten, like with the beverages, I've consumed calories here. And necessarily sort of banking and acknowledging that, hey, I also had this between lunch and dinner, and I had this after dinner as well. People don't mentally account for this stuff in many cases. And especially when the snacks or the grazing bites in question are particularly calorie-rich items. You might get away with it with lower calorie density items like fresh fruit, of course, and vegetables, maybe just have a couple of baby carrots. No big drama. I don't want to put anyone off eating some more baby carrots. I think for most of us, that's going to be an objectively very, very good thing. But when you're thinking about trail mix, and you're thinking again about things like medjool dates, are you thinking about just grabbing, I'm kind of peckish between meals, so I'm going to have some peanut butter, lather that on a bit of toast, bang! 200 calories there, like that, gone, down the old Swanee. And so this is something that I think, again, people aren't necessarily accounting for, how much they mindlessly graze and snack throughout the day, even on, again, healthy whole plant foods. And this is where there is a distinction between eating clean and eating in a calorically appropriate manner to get you results on the scale. And so just be careful with the grazing and snacking. Make sure you are accounting for it, I would say, especially if it's the more calorie-rich items. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't, nothing is binary. It doesn't mean that you can't graze and snack. That's not my position. That's not my view. I eat 2 to 3 snacks a day. My clients eat 1 to 2 snacks per day in most cases. You can absolutely do this. You just want to ensure that they are lower calorie items on the whole, that you are still really counting as food consumption. And so what my clients will often do is fresh fruit. They might make my chia and raisin oat bars. We do our oil-free popcorn with a little bit of salt or stevia. There are banana and ice cream. There are lower calorie rice cakes, maybe with a light layer of hummus. There are lower calorie snack items you can do, but they still all count. Mistake number 4, your quote unquote home diet is actually really solid. And maybe you notice in periods where you spend a lot of time at home and you aren't invited to restaurants or have lots of social events, birthday parties, weddings, etc., you might even notice the scale dropping a considerable amount. But anything outside the house, anything where you have to sit down in a restaurant or grab something on the go, all hell breaks loose. But again, maybe in quite a covert way, because I promised you at the outset that this is not a video where I'm going to do, you eat lots of vegan junk food shtick. This is for people that really, truly in their heart believe, no, I'm eating well. What's going on? I'm genuinely confused. I can't see the mistakes here. I'm following the whole foods plant-based principles. So when you are eating out, it's therefore assumed that you're still picking the superfood salads, the healthy poke bowls. Maybe you're going for sushi, vegetable sushi, like I often recommend as a pretty safe bet for a meal out in these videos. You feel that you're not having dessert, and maybe you're limiting, you're sharing only an appetizer, and you're not having beverages. You're not having a glass of wine on the side. So again, in your mind, hey, I'm checking the boxes. I thought I was doing this quite well. It's the hidden calories, folks, in many cases. It's the oils, it's those more invisible calories in the dressings and the sauces. Of course, it's in a restaurant's best interest to make their food taste delicious, so they're going to add all the fat and the richness and the creaminess, etc., some of those more high-fat items, lots of oil to make their stuff taste delicious. Then they lather on lots of salt to get you to eat more of it. I'm not an anti-salt guy, just to be crystal clear. I like a bit of salt. But yeah, they're doing all of this stuff that I think is what I'm trying to say to enhance the taste of the meal. Maybe then do you wind up eating a little bit more than you would the same amount at home, especially, my friends across the pond, the way that some of your restaurants do, or the vast majority, I should say in my 7 trips to the US in my experience, my humble experience, I would suggest, yeah, you guys do portions big, is what I'm trying to say. And so, yeah, you might be eating cleanly as a meal out goes, but again, are the calories necessarily in check there? And what can't you see? Well, I've got a nice superfood salad. Oh, that dressing is looking pretty thick. It's pretty delicious. And so what I have that I always do myself now is my plus 150 calorie rule. When I eat out, I add in my mind, even as good as I am after all my years doing this, coaching, living this lifestyle myself, even though I'm quite good at eyeballing the amount of calories in a dish, I still don't know for sure. And something that stood me in good stead for my 5-6 months in Asia last year was every meal that I kind of estimate that I've eaten out the house, oh, that's probably 500 calories. This feels to me like 650 calories. I add 150 calories, the plus 150 calories rule. And that's quite a big buffer. In some cases, it probably wound up too small a buffer because I severely underestimated it. In some cases, it was over the top. It was actually quite generous as a buffer, but that's good. I'd rather have it that way around than necessarily the other way around, that I'm really undershooting it. But that 150 calorie rule, that I find really helpful to really account for the gravity of how many calories are in even a healthy looking meal out. You're reading the menu, the ingredients look good, but oh my goodness, it turns up and there's loads of sauce, loads of dressings, they've sprinkled like 3 tablespoons of seeds on an otherwise low calorie salad, and just you're watching the calories go up. I know this video is very calorie focused and not everybody likes that, because one of the appeals of plant-based eating is this is how it's pitched. This is not how, I'm very careful not to pitch it like this, but hey, you don't have to worry about calories so much when you eat this way. And I would say there is some truth to that. When you eat a more whole foodsy diet, you don't have to pay as much attention to calories. That doesn't mean calories aren't important. Just because you don't have to pay as much attention doesn't mean they don't count. And lastly, but most certainly not least, mistake number 5. I say not least because I think this topic is under-discussed in the plant-based community. Perhaps it's under-discussed because it's not actually nutrition related, so it doesn't seem relevant. But to me, it's absolutely relevant to the equation of weight loss. You already know where I'm going with this. It's that you're not doing much exercise. You're doing very minimal exercise. Let's say actually your food practices, your nutrition practices are pretty damn fantastic. You're eating, as I've said throughout, a whole foods focused diet. And now we've gone through our other 4 mistakes and traps to avoid here. You're actually thinking, I'm not doing too many of those things. I'm doing pretty good, Ryan. But this makes me even more mystified and confused. Why am I not losing weight? Because even on Ryan's list, even by Ryan's list, I think I'm doing a really good job. Exercise is what I feel we should turn our attention to. If for whatever reason you have a particularly slow metabolic rate, weight loss feels increasingly hard or elusive to you, exercise is your golden ticket. And don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily trust, respectfully, a lot of folks' self-diagnosis of, I'm a hard loser, I'm a really stubborn loser, weight loss is really hard for me. I kind of throw it into the category of this sort of I'm so unique bias that I feel a lot of us cling on to sometimes as an excuse to not really try, or for an excuse for our not getting results. I think a lot of people respectfully, I'm not being that respectful, misdiagnose, oh, weight loss is so hard for me, I'm the odd one out. I don't think that's the case for many people, but if you have reason to believe and you have historically observed for whatever reason, you seem to have to push your calories so low to even get the scale moving, it does feel elusive to you. Your BMR, basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories you can eat just to maintain your weight feels quite low compared to other people with your stats, or maybe compared to 20 years ago, that's a good example as well. Then for you, exercise is the golden ticket. Getting up that step, especially if you're not doing much, obviously, getting up that step count, maybe doing some light cardio. You don't need to do anything over the top. You can literally just sit like I do on the recumbent bike at the gym sometimes and do 20-25 minutes on that like I do once or twice a week. That alone in isolation might not be enough. Maybe combine that with a few more steps. Maybe do some yoga classes, some Pilates. Again, I'm talking about very steady state, low intensity stuff that doesn't spike appetite. It isn't a big commitment level. You don't need to be super fit to do it. So we start gently. It's the baby step approach that I've been running on in Slim and Sustain for years. You've heard, perhaps if you've seen my videos before, about my whole slow go philosophy. I love this more slow go approach to exercise. It's steady, it's safe, it's sustainable. It's the perfect way to start. You can add already to your calorie deficit nicely and just change that calorie formula, that calorie equation, stack the deck in your favor a little bit more and just, yeah, raise the metabolic rate, get a couple more 100 calories burned per day through exercise. This could make all the difference. So that's it. Those are my 5 big plant-based weight loss mistakes I'm seeing over and over again. And as always, the solution is exactly the same, and it's twofold. Part 1 is you need a plan for food and, as we've just discussed, exercise that puts you in a sensible calorie deficit rather than just sort of hit and hope whole foods. Most ideally, you want to know I am definitely in a calorie deficit, and you don't need to track your calories necessarily to do that, but you just want a bit more certainty that you're in one from following good calorie density principles and practices. And part 2, of course, the calorie deficit is important, but this is really important. Part 2, you actually need to stay consistent, right? You actually need to stay on track enough with the aforementioned calorie deficit to make sure you are getting results. So yes, it's a bit of work, and sometimes people just go, you know what, I've lost the first 10 pounds, I already feel a bit better. I don't want to care this much about this. Fair enough, I respect your decision on that. Unless you're out of a healthy weight range, then I advise you in the strongest urgency to confront that one and just get on with it and get over your own laziness and limiting beliefs there, bluntly put. But yes, it's work, but my word, plant-based diet, out of everything I've tried, and I've done it now for 10 years, is by far, and there's a reason why it stuck for me, is by far the easiest and most sustainable way that I've found to lose weight. So this is, in my mind, the best way that you can go about achieving, 1, a calorie deficit, and 2, staying consistent with that calorie deficit because of all the wonderful components and characteristics of this amazing approach to nutrition. And of course, if you do want more help and support with this, you're eating clean already, you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet already, but you're still stuck on the scale. What I've shared today is useful, but it still doesn't feel like enough structure, and you just want a really hands-on approach that tells you, hey, here's exactly what, how much to eat, and then of course, massive, and this is the important part, massive accountability to actually keep you on track with that very plan. This is exactly what I help build for my clients inside my Slim and Sustain one-on-one coaching program. I'll put all the links to Slim and Sustain to go and learn more down below there.